picture's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. I'm not having a very good day with my audio-visual equipment, but otherwise I'm having a fabulous day, but I've wasted quite a bit of time because here I am on my balcony with not a very exciting backdrop. If I turn it so you can see the greenery, the lighting's no good. I can't fool around with anything anymore because I just went and shot a 20-minute version of this in an ugly little parquet. Managed to find a little bit of greenery in the background. It was my first time in that little parquet 5 minutes away. And then when I played it back, the audio was completely distorted. Let me play you 10 seconds because the whole thing was garbled like this. Listen to this. Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. I'm kind of in a... Okay, so that's completely unusable. I haven't told you guys because I just thought it was a one-time glitch. The same thing happened last weekend with the video that I shot and I redid it. It was my book haul video, and so I redid that whole book haul video inside and never told you about it. So it's happened twice with the new iPad. I had all kinds of mic problems with the old iPad, which is why I bought the new iPad, and I never had that kind of a problem. But I'm going to chalk it up to my little lapel mic. There's something wrong with it hooked into the jack thing where you put your earphones in. I'm going on that operating assumption, and now I'm using my Yeti Blue expensive microphone which plugs into the lightning thing, and I'm going to assume that that will solve the problem and I just shouldn't use that lapel mic anymore. If the same thing happens with this, I'm going to scream! So let me have a listen. Okay, we seem to be in business. So I've had a fantastic reading week. A lot of the books that I finished or whatever, I'm actually going to be doing full reviews very soon, so I won't talk so much about those, just give you a little hot take, and so that's going to shorten this. So I'm going to just kind of give you a check-in on all the books that I'm currently reading as well to flesh things out, because I have had a truly wonderful reading week. I have started one book this week. On Monday I started reading Agnes Gray, Anne Bronte's debut novel. Do we use the word debut when we're talking about a Victorian novelist? I'm not sure, but anyway, it was her first novel, 1847, so it just came in under the wire for the prompt about reading a Victorian novel from the first decade of the era. And this is not quite finished. I'll finish it tomorrow. This has been a buddy read with Britta Bowler, and what a shitty novel. I'm not hating it. It's too much fun laughing at how bad it is. I'm not hating it. I was never in any danger of bailing, but what an inferior piece of literature. My God. It should be regarded. She was 27 when it was published, but it reads like juvenilia. Just really bad. I'll have more to say in my review. I actually have been more interested in just kind of reading up on the Brontes. I haven't read up on the Brontes since I was probably an undergrad, and what a fascinating family. But and apparently Anne Bronte's other novel, didn't she only write two? Anyway, The Tenant of Wildfell Hall is supposed to be amazing, but Agnes Gray ain't. There's been that, and I finished 3 books this week. One of them for Victober, which I'll start with, and I'm not planning to do a full review, so I will talk about it at some length, and that was Thomas Hardy's Under the Greenwood Tree. Loved it. 5 stars. A really idyllic, pastoral, character-centered story in the small parish of Mellstock, centering on a cast of really colorful characters, all members of the choir. And the youngest one, Dick Dewey, becomes infatuated with the new school teacher, Fanny Day, and so it's a bit of a romance. And the characters are so colorful. It's not really a plot-centered novel. What little plot is this romance story, but the romantic story is so sensuous and so true to life. I loved it. It doesn't have any of the darkness of later Hardy novels. As an undergrad, I studied The Mayor of Casterbridge, which I loved, and then many years later read Jude the Obscure, which I could see was really important in terms of how he broke from his style and tackled some very controversial subjects for his day, but I didn't enjoy the writing. I preferred his old style, but those are the two Hardys I've read. This was just charming. Charmed the pants off me. There's a scene involving hands in dishwater that is so erotic. I absolutely was filled with joy reading it. All of the characters were so quirky. Fanny Day's stepmother, I will never forget. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's a bit of a slow-moving novel because there isn't a lot that happens, but I loved it. I did it as an audio-text combo. My version of the audiobook was narrated by Jamie Parker. I loved it. Really great. The other two that I finished were not connected to Victober. Yesterday I finally finished Barbara Pym's final novel, Quartet in Autumn, published in 1977, nominated for the Booker that year or the next year, written just 3 years before she died. She continued revising novels that she had started decades earlier after that. That's my memory from having read Hazel Holt's biography of Barbara Pym earlier this year, but this was her final novel. And it was sitting at about a 4-star read throughout. I thought it was unrelentingly dark and depressing about these senior citizens, contemplating retirement and death and total absence of deep human connection between any of them. But the ending was so pitch perfect and perfectly Pymmian that I couldn't help but give it 5 enthusiastic stars. I'll be doing a full review in the coming days. Loved it! Just this morning, I finally finished the biography of E.F. Benson by Brian Masters. This was published in 1991, and there was a buddy read between Leah, my Litzy friend Leah, who I met for the first time at my wedding in August, and this was actually a gift from her several months before that, because at the time that we discussed doing a buddy read of his biography, I was too poor, and she came to my aid. I'm going to do a full review of this. This was a 4-star read because it's a masterful biography in all respects except the central one, which was Brian Masters was so uncomfortable and heterosexist. I hesitate to go so far as to use the word homophobic, but certainly deeply discomforted by the notion of whether or not E.F. Benson was gay, that it marred an otherwise wonderful biography. And E.F. Benson's queerness was pretty central to his life and to many of his writings, so it was marred, but I still gave it 4 stars because it was such an entertaining romp. I'll be doing a full, slightly ranty review of this also in the coming days. I have no books that I'm planning to start in the coming week. I have 2 books left to do for Victober, in addition to what I'm currently reading, but I'm not planning to start either of those before the weekend after next, so I won't tell you about them. So instead, let me just go down the list of all the books that I'm currently reading or am supposedly currently reading. We'll start with one that definitely is supposedly, and that is The Garden Party by Catherine Mansfield. Long-time subscribers, long-time subscribers may remember that I started reading this much earlier this year, and my plan was to adopt the Simon Savage approach to getting more short stories into my reading life, which the principle is genius. Every time you finish a book, read a short story from your whatever collection you're reading before you pick up the next novel or whatever. Perfect idea. In practice, it hasn't been working at all for me because I'm got so many buddy reads happening that I don't have a window where I can spend a day reading a short story before my next buddy read begins. Happy problem, right? But that's why I just haven't gotten back to The Garden Party in about 3 or 4 months. So I hope to finish it somehow, some way, before the end of the year, because it was an absolute delight, the 2 stories I had read, but I haven't touched it for months. The rest of them are much more in progress. The one that you haven't heard me talk about for some weeks is the Urdu novel that I started reading as part of Women in Translation Month. It's a really bad title, but a wonderful novel. The title is The One Who Did Not Ask, by Altaf Fatima. And I am still really enjoying it. I'm reading about 3 or 4 chapters a week, and the chapters are really short, so I'm making very slow progress because I'm trying to fit it in around all my buddy reads. But I just continue to find it a lush, rich reading experience. I'm having trouble keeping the large cast of characters in the extended family straight in my head because of all the unfamiliar naming conventions and nicknames, but I've decided that I can let go of that. I don't need to keep track of all those characters. I just need to focus on the main characters in the main family, and it's still really what a delightful experience. I am about 2/3 of the way through it, so I hope to finish it maybe this month, but sometime soon. I am about not quite halfway through the biography of the Welsh language writer from Wales, Kate Roberts, most famous to the degree that she's famous in the English-speaking literary world for her short stories. Kate Roberts, the biography is by Katie Grammich, and I am really enjoying it. It's the first time in my life I have ever read a biography of a writer before having read anything written by that writer, and I explain how that happened in one of my vlogs for the Women in Translation Readathon, and I'm not going to take the time to repeat it here. I will be repeating it when I do a review of this biography, but I'm really enjoying it, and I can't wait to read some Kate Robbins fiction translated from the Welsh. She died in the maybe late 70s, and she was about 90. That's my memory. Lived a long life and wrote tons and tons of short stories that have been compared to Virginia Woolf and many other great European practitioners of the short story form, so I cannot wait to try some of those. And she married a gay guy in the 1920s. Ooh, ooh, ooh. I haven't gotten back to the audiobook that I started a few weeks ago by Dennis Johnson, Train Dreams, for this because of Victober. I'm doing a huge audiobook. I've just kind of put it aside. I was really enjoying it. Hope to get back to it. It's a short little audiobook. I think it's only about 6 hours, so but it's kind of way on the back burner because of Victober. Much more regular, I'm making very good progress with Charlotte Young's novel, The Heir of Redcliffe, and boy, I can't help but compare it to the canonical Anne Brontë and Charlotte Young, who nobody's ever heard of. It's much a superior novel in terms of character development and scenes, and I would say the writing is maybe equal, but it's a much superior novel that nobody's ever heard of, and I am really enjoying it. Now, I wouldn't put Charlotte Young on the same plane as a Jane Austen or maybe a George Eliot, but she's certainly head and shoulders above Ms. Brontë. It's a long one, so I've been reading about a chapter a day, and I'm going to need to pick up the pace to finish it this month, and I will finish it this month. It's a buddy read with Ange Beyond the Pages. I would say probably it's going to be my top read of October, and that is Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell, which I'm doing pretty much exclusively on audio, and my audio version is narrated by Patience Tomlinson, and I dip into the ebook when I have time to do both, like if I'm riding on the train or whatever, but otherwise Patience Tomlinson's narration is so perfectly matched to my ear that I cannot help but listen intently to her voice, no matter what I'm doing. I can be grocery shopping, I can be paying for my groceries. I am not distracted from Patience Tomlinson's narration of this wonderful novel. So that's rare for me, that you find a narrator that you click with that deeply, and I have, and I'm really enjoying the story. I'm about 1/3 of the way through that as well, so I'm just on the right, I've got 3 weeks left, so no problem. You'll remember that, was it last week? I can't remember, that I bailed on one Welsh novel in favor of another Welsh novel. So the Welsh novel that I'm currently reading, and I'm only about 12% of the way through that, but because of all the books that I've finished, I'm going to be able to put a lot more time in with it, is called Rhys Lewis by Daniel Owen. Rhys Lewis was published in about 1885, I think, in Welsh, and this is a modern translation by Robert Lomas. And I'm really enjoying it. It's charming in a similar way to Hardy's Under the Greenwood Tree, but this is a first-person narrative about Rhys Lewis's life. And he is an old man, but he's going, right now I'm still in the childhood section, and just charmingly narrated stories of his school days and stuff. A little bit Dickensian in a good way, not sentimental. That's the part of Dickens that I hate, but just really charming anecdotes that just make me smile from a really deep place. And the writing, the translation is really good. So I hope I continue to enjoy it, but I sure am. And it's my first the first piece of Welsh fiction I've ever read, but not the last. Right, Charlotte? And I've told you about Agnes Gray. So that's what I've got going on, and almost all of it is really good. And like I say, I'm not hating Agnes Gray. I'm just kind of enjoying laughing at how bad it is for such a canonical writer. So it's fun. And that's what's been going on for me, reading-wise. How about you? What's up? Reading-wise or otherwise? Thanks for watching.